Hi, everyone. My name is Reinette Senum, and this is Western Women Save the World. It's our #2 podcast. And I'm actually here with Dr. Robert Rowen. And I just was introduced to him recently by a dear friend of mine, Penelope Sullivan, who said, you have got to interview this man. Dr. Rowen, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate this.
Well, thank you for having me. So you want to talk about COVID today?
I want to talk about COVID. And before we get into that topic, could you just give us a little bit of your background so we know who you are and why we're Zooming today?
Well, I'm an integrative physician. I went to medical school at UC San Francisco, which is not considered a schlock. But I will say I almost quit at the end of my 3rd year because I thought I was being trained to be a pimp for pharma. And I am an environmentalist, and I didn't like poisoning my patients with chemicals, even while I was in medical school. But I stayed with it. So that should tell you what my bent is. I got into alternative medicine deeply in 1982 to 1983. I got into ozone therapy in 1986. I've been doing it longer than anyone else in North America. I led a charge in Alaska to protect alternative medicine from the medical mafia. We got a law passed in 1990, and I was appointed to a term on the state medical board. And when I married my wife in 2001, I came down to California, and I currently practice in Santa Rosa.
Gotcha. So you had mentioned to me earlier that you have published a couple different papers regarding COVID and possible therapeutics. Can you dive into that for us?
I have several articles that are published. They're on my office website, which is drrowen.su.com. drrowen.su.com, not S-U-E, S-U.
Gotcha.
She's Chinese. And my foray into this type of disease started in 2014. I already had nearly 30 years of experience with ozone when I saw what was going on with Ebola in Sierra Leone. And I decided ozone would be the ideal therapy for this. And I wanted to go. And Providence provided a direct link to the president of that country who invited me to come. And I recruited a friend of mine, his name is Howard Robbins, to come with me. And we went. And while we were there, the mission was sabotaged. We found out later, and I knew it at the time, by pharmaceutical interests who did not want to see this project proceed. But our team did manage to get to 5 cases of Ebola. Now, Ebola is the most lethal disease the world has ever known. No one's going to argue with that. This COVID 0.2% mortality rate, which is about what it is. I take it back, 0.4 to 0.5%.
Okay. Highly
Contagious, but low mortality. Is nothing compared to Ebola, nothing. And we went, we were not afraid, and our team got to 5 cases. All 5 cases recovered virtually immediately and had no complications, and I published it. And the world doesn't know because the world doesn't want to know, because the world is run by nefarious interests. And it's run by pharma and the people who own pharma and are terrorizing us, as I see it, for profit and control. This is profit and control. Control probably more than profit because they've already got all the money anyway. This is now a control issue. Now, in several months ago, around the first week of March, Dr. Robbins and I published a journal in the Journal of Infectious Diseases and Epidemiology on the theoretical use of ozone and COVID. And we explain why it should be an ideal therapy. And when we get into the mechanism, the person will understand that. And it was published. No one ran with it. No one wanted to pick it up. Although people in the ozone world did, the media, again, totally ignored it. Mm-hmm. And when I put it up on YouTube, YouTube immediately took it down. Mm-hmm. Another article came out. Now, I was the principal author of that article. Another article came out about 2 weeks ago where I was not principal author, I was third author. And this was on what we call the Brownstein protocol for COVID. David Brownstein is a friend of mine. I assisted them with this, so I got honored with the position on the manuscript. And in this manuscript, nutrition played a primary role, and oxidation, ozone, played a secondary role. Out of 107 cases, no deaths, only one hospitalization.
Wow. Wow.
It's incredible work.
Right.
The media hasn't picked it up because the media, as it should be obvious, is controlled by the fear-mongering press to whip up fear and hysteria. I mean, you have now, in the Brownstein article, I believe there were 33 tests that they were able to get, because this is several months ago before you couldn't get the test done. And 27 were positive. So if you extrapolate, if all of them were tested, and which is a fair thing to do, because the medical mob was doing the same thing. If you extrapolate, you would probably have about 90 positives.
Wow.
No deaths.
Right.
And these people were symptomatic.
Oh.
And many of them had complicating factors. I have treated a known COVID positive patient who was symptomatic, who came to me from the Sacramento area. And on the treatment chair, getting a 10-pass ozone, all the patient's symptoms got better on the chair before the patient left the office.
Wow.
I put that up on YouTube, and that was removed within 5 minutes as well. Now, this should tell people what's going on. So there is fear and hysteria, and I believe that this disease, you know, I don't want to get into the history. I don't know if this was planned or an accident. It could be either, but we're stuck with it. But what they're doing to us, to me, is nefarious. Right. Because they are not, you're dealing with a disease that typically hits the elderly. And I guess I fall into that too, because I'm 70. So I should be living in fear and panic, and I'm not. I'm not afraid of this thing at all, like I wasn't afraid of Ebola. It's dealing with more debilitated people. In Sonoma County, we have some deaths, but they're admitting it's in the nursing homes, it's in the Hispanic population. Why is it in the nursing homes? Because you have older people and they're being fed crap. Right. So their terrain is fertile for this. Why is it in the Hispanic population? Because they're more crowded.
I have a question for you. Can you talk about the difference between germ versus terrain theory, what that is, and what theory it is that we are only considering these days?
We're considering the germ theory only, that you get a disease and you suffer and die because of the germ. And this was a big fight in the 1800s between Louis Pasteur and a guy named Bishop. I think his first name was Claude, but I'm not sure. And Pasteur won because he had the loudest voice. And he said the germ is everything. You get the germ, you're going to die. Well, that's nonsense. We know that you have to get a particular dose of germs in order to cause a problem. So some people, it's a bell-shaped curve. Some people get exposed to a little and might get a problem. Some people need to get exposed to a lot. But then that falls down to the terrain, the fertility of the body. Bacteria are plants. Most people don't know that. Plants grow in fertile soil. And I want my vegetables to be grown in very fertile soil so that I get good nutrition. But if the soil's not fertile, if it doesn't have minerals, if it doesn't have organic material, the plants are going to suffer. If it's too cold, that's infertility for certain plants. If it's too hot, it's infertility for other plants. Well, all organisms need a fertile terrain in order to get you. Well, the terrain of the of viruses, and I knew this with Ebola. I read the information before I made the decision to go. I'm the first one who actually did this, and I proved it out by going there. And also, it applies to coronavirus. The terrain of this virus is that the virus has to have electrons, a reduced state. This is just biochemistry. Oxygen takes electrons, so it oxidizes. And oxygen is going to leave you with a paucity of electrons, so it's an oxidized state. Reduction is putting electrons in. Everybody knows what acid-base chemistry is, pH, right? And we know that pH is held by the blood very critically at about 7.4. The body doesn't want to vary from that very much at all. Right. Very serious if it does. Enzyme's going to operate at a very strict pH. You alter that a mere fraction and the enzyme might not work. That's acid-base chemistry. The same thing is for redox, oxidation reduction. And these viruses have to operate, it's like fingers on your hand. Here's the cookie jar. And you have to have fingers to open up the cookie jar to get in and plop in. That's what the virus does. Well, the fingers on these viruses are sulfhydryl groups, SH groups. And they hang like this and they attach to the cell, the spike protein, and they drop right in. Well, that spike protein is easily oxidized and blunted by ozone. It just chops off the sulfhydryl group, leaving it like this.
Wow.
Now it can't open the cookie jar. It's that simple.
Well, you know, the reason why I really want to speak with you is because there's so much fear going around this community. And there's such a panacea of belief that the mask will save our lives. And I'm not anti-mask, but I'm not giving the mask that much weight or credence when I know there's, for instance, terrain therapy, you have ozone therapy, there's other things, there's other therapeutics out there that we know have been successful, have been censored. And so what can you say to the average person out there who's putting all of their faith into the mask and who are afraid that if they don't wear a mask, they're going to die? What can you say to them?
The mask doesn't protect you, period. Because the virus it's tiny. I mean, the air exchange in the mask is going to suck the virus right in. There's no doubt about it. What the mask does is, to a degree, it will protect the other person. And I'm not going to argue with this. By the way, I believe in logic first. And I actually believe in logic over alleged science, because you can manipulate science and get whatever outcome you want. That's known. Right. The logic is here with a mask. You have a mask over you like this. And if I cough or sneeze right now, it's going to go into my hand rather than onto my computer screen. Right. Right. So it's going to reduce the velocity of the droplets coming out and protect the next guy. I don't have any issue with that, but it ain't going to protect me. Because if the organisms are out here, it's going to come sucked right in through the mask or around the openings of the mask. Right. So this mask stuff is a lot of nonsense to me, but it's got real value, I believe, just logically, in protecting the next guy. Right. So I do believe in masks to protect the next guy, but I don't believe in them outdoors. And here in the outdoors, I go taking a hike into the woods every week, 3 to 4 miles in, and I'm finding masks littering the wilderness. To me, this is idiocy, wearing masks 3 miles in the woods. Right, right. I don't get it.
So my question is this, though. Is there a need for us to wear masks at all if there's already solutions and therapies out there that are successful, why are we living in such fear? Because from what I know, from what I've learned, you can't outrun a virus, right? Ultimately, it has to work its way through a population. You may be able to slow it down, but you can't really outrun it. Is that true?
As I said, masks might protect the next guy. So I'm going to be courteous. And if I enter a food store or in another building, I will wear a mask. I want them to rest easier. Do I think it's doing a lot of good? It might. I have a son in Singapore who is absolutely convinced that masks are protecting Taiwan. I'm not super convinced of that because Taiwan's low problem rate might be due to better tracing, might be due to better diet, it might be due to other things, but I'll give it the credit. So I think it's reasonable to wear a mask when you are within close contact of other people. I think it's garbage idea to wear it outdoors, to be honest with you. Now, if you're in a riot or a demonstration where there's thousands of people around you, well, now your people are in your space and breathing your air where you could be coughing, etc. So there might be an advantage there. But you know what's really smart about this virus? This is a really brilliant virus. It only goes 6 feet. It doesn't go 6 feet 1 inch. So you don't have to worry if you're 6 feet 1 inch. And it also knows not to transmit if you're looting, rioting, or demonstrating. So don't worry about that. Oh, but the mayors of these cities have just recently admitted yesterday that it might have been transmitted during the looting and rioting. They just admitted it. So maybe the virus isn't as smart as I thought it was. Right. So I admit I'm wrong.
Now, the virus, though, when we talk about outside, I've been seeing that a lot too, and on hiking trails and people exercising and children, families out in the hot sun. The viruses have like a fatty exterior, correct? And in the heat, essentially it just melts, right?
Remember, I said that these viruses are vulnerable to oxidation. Right. Ultraviolet is an oxidant.
Gotcha.
So ultraviolet's been known for generations, well over 100 years, to inactivate viruses and bacteria. Right. And it does so by oxidizing their outer coat and rendering them inactive. Gotcha. I am 70, as I told you. I am not in fear of this thing. I wouldn't be, I mean, it's just for protocol that I'll wear a mask with somebody, but I wouldn't be afraid of walking into a hospital where there's COVID, unmasked, ungloved, right, and treating it because I'm taking ozone and I have a good diet and I believe my terrain is not fertile ground for this thing.
And what are your thoughts on children wearing masks?
I think it's nonsense. I think it's bad. It's bad for them up here. They're reducing. They will have to work harder to breathe and get oxygen, and children are not at great risk. Children are the ones who should be getting this to build up herd immunity. They're not at risk. Yes, there have been a few children dying, but there's also children who die of influenza. And we don't have this craziness that goes around with seasonal influenza each year that kills 50,000 plus. Right, right. So this virus appears to be maybe twice as lethal as influenza. And my family is a medical family. And they're looking at this. One's an academic. And it's been admitted to me that that's about what it is. It's about twice as lethal as flu. And we have destroyed an economy. And in my opinion, this is an opinion now, we have destroyed the lives and probably killed many more people from what we've done to the economy than this thing was ever going to do. And what is agreed with my academic family is you're going to have the same number of people get this regardless of masks and social distancing, because the virus is endemic. It's going to make its rounds through the entire population. It's only a matter of speed and the curve, and they've moved the goalposts. The idea initially was to blunt the peak so that there would be more hospital beds for ventilators. Well, now we know that ventilators don't work. They kill you. So that goalpost has been changed. And now they're trying to cut the numbers and stamp this thing out, and it just can't happen. So I would prefer the children to get it. The concept of closing schools, it's just going to destroy lives, literally, and families. And I think it's sheer, this is my opinion, it's lunacy. And here we have a treatment, or it's not just ozone. There's a lot of treatments out there that are cheap, totally safe, totally blacklisted. There's a blackout on this by the government and the rulers. I don't call them a government, I call them rulers. I put this out to our governor and the state of California. They wrote me back politely, thanks, but no thanks. We're not interested, because they asked for technology and I put it out with an article. Thanks, but no thanks. And somebody has, on my behalf, sent out thousands of messages to news media outlets, government officials, etc., on ozone and these other therapies. There hasn't been one feedback of interest. Not one conventional media outlet has even looked at this or reported on it as a possibility, even though it's being worked on in Italy, Spain, and China. And the preliminary results are stunning, and it's known and it's out there on the internet. In this country, my friend Howard Robbins has treated 9 COVID patients with DIV ozone, which costs less than $1 per treatment, in materials. I said materials, not my time. And all of them have done very well. So this is what we're dealing with.
If that is not the most telling of all, that you've reached out to the governor, to major media, and basically they continue to ignore you, that really tells you a great insight into the motive.
It's worse than that. I was in touch with an award-winning journalist who works for the New York Daily News, and she was ready to run with this. And she talked to her people at the New York Daily News, and after days and days of going back and forth, they told her they were not going to run it. And Howard Robbins had somebody from another major media outlet that was interested and wanted to run it. And then he called Dr. Robbins back and said, I can't do it. Robbins said, well, just tell me one thing, yes or no. Were you told by your superiors not to do it? The answer was yes.
Right. So
then you post something on YouTube under freedom of speech, which doesn't apply to YouTube because it's privately owned. And you have a patient himself or herself saying, on the chair, you're videoing this patient getting treated, and the symptoms vanish on the treatment chair, and it gets pulled. Just the patient telling their story.
Right.
That's what we're dealing with.
So my last question for you, before we start wrapping this up, is what do you recommend are the best steps for the American public, every citizen around the planet? What are the best steps to protect themselves against the virus? Because right now what we have is social distance, stay at home, wear a mask, and that really seems to be the only 3 things that we're able to discuss and share. So what are the other options?
More important than that is we figure out how to protect ourselves from the government. Okay. And Bill Gates, and pharma, and mandatory forced vaccines. That takes precedent, in my opinion, because we're on a runaway train right now where everybody's being convinced that only vaccines, and they're testing the vaccines on young, healthy males, maybe if some females, but generally it's 20 to 45-year-old males for safety. And on the bell-shaped curve, they're going to be hardier, but the vaccines have had considerable toxicity and quote, side effects. There's no side effects. These are direct effects. People should be wary of this to begin with because we are being led by the Pied Piper. And if you don't remember that, go see the old Disney movie. I think it was Disney, about the Pied Piper leading all the kids off to Never Never Land. Because that's where we're going with this. And I believe there is a nefarious agenda here. That's my opinion. Now, with regard to the virus, I believe ultimately we're all going to be exposed to it, because they're not going to keep social distancing forever, although they might.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe the world has changed forever, and children are not going to be able to see other people's faces and read body language. And we're going to have to wear masks when we walk into a building, etc.
Yeah, but that's not living. That's not living.
It's not. I want to see your face. You got a pretty face. I don't. Yes, you're 400 miles from me, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to see you, your body language.
For sure.
So,
so basically, I think
the fundamentals of diseases are improper nutrition, toxins, and stress. Those are the three fundamentals. In my office, we go with detoxification and nutrition first. Stress is more difficult to deal with. So we work on helping your nutritional status so you get a better response. We detoxify you. So you ask, what can people do? Well, go read the Brownstein Protocol. Go to my Facebook page, like it, read it. The articles are mentioned on there. I haven't put up the Brownstein article on my website because the FTC has attacked people who are suggesting that they might be able to treat people with some of these things, and then they get attacked by the government. That's what we're dealing with.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much. I kind of caught you on the fly. I do know you're on vacation, so this is really kind of you to take the time. And I want to thank you for your brilliance, for your speaking up for truth, and also for your amazing persistence, because you're at the very tip of that spear, trying to inform people and teach them and let them know that we have actually alternatives and solutions out there. So I just want to thank you so very, very much. And I'm going to get this up and I'm going to share it widely, and make sure, even though I will have it on YouTube, I am getting a BitChute page together, or channel as well. So I have a little extra backup, because I do know YouTube is pretty serious with their censorship.
Yeah, I'm glad you're going to have it on YouTube. Send me the link, but I will bet you that YouTube will censor it.
I'm sure, and we're backing that up, so of course.
So back it up on LBRY. That's another place to put it.
Okay.
And give me the links, because I want people to know and see this. And again, I am not telling people not to wear masks. I am in favor of it. Mm-hmm. I wear an organic cotton mask that's very kind and gentle to my skin. Mm-hmm. And you can get it. But see, then there's another mask issue. You're breathing into this all day long, so it's an incubator for organisms because it's containing moisture. Then you might touch the mask, which is contaminated, and you're going to spread all this stuff all around, all over the place. The goalposts have changed. Initially, I couldn't even go to the store and use a plastic bag that I got my head of lettuce with last week. I had to get a new plastic bag to contaminate the environment. Right. Instead of recycling, which is what I do. Now the goalposts have changed, and they're letting me do that, because after the fact, which they should have known immediately, that this was not a contact disease. But then they have people wiping down everything and spraying streets. To me, this has been madness and lunacy, and not a shred of logic. And we have a government, this is my opinion, this is free speech right now. We have a government that's gone mad, and it's dealing with control. We have health officials. I mean, I tried to get this into the local hospitals to let them know, hey, I'm willing to go in at no charge. I won't charge for my time. And I was rebuffed and laughed at. One doctor hung the phone up on me.
Amazing. Wow.
So I don't even bother. My local daily rag, I have sent things to, they totally ignore me, like it's blacklisted, even though I've published. Right. Imagine a citizen local goes to Africa to treat Ebola and risks his life, publishes, and they won't even run it. They don't even talk to me. This is what's going on.
Well, this is the gist of our whole conversation I want people to get, is that there's so many folks in fear. And yet, like what you said, you have a solution. There are other therapeutics out there that have been very successful. And yet our media and our government continue to ignore it. So that's the biggest nugget you can take away, is asking yourself, why would our government, why would our media do that? And we'll just kind of leave it with that. And well, I will let you go, Dr. Rowen. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And don't be surprised if I give you a call in the near future and we follow this up for some updates. That would be fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.